When there was the beginning of the space cargo and crew programs, the two serious bidders were SpaceX and Boeing, and everybody poo-pooed SpaceX and said, oh, Boeing is a legacy company. Well, guess who is about to make its sixth flight after its first test flight with astronauts? And guess who's still on the ground? Yep, you probably won't believe it, but this is exactly what NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, who once didn't take SpaceX seriously, just declared. Perhaps he's finally put prejudice aside and realizes Starliner is just too bad to compare with Dragon. In 2011, NASA ended its space shuttle program with high costs, slow turnaround, and safety problems that led to the fatal Challenger and Columbia disasters among the factors of its demise. Since then, NASA's resorted to purchasing rocket trips to and from the ISS from Russia. Keen to restore spaceflight to the U.S. soil in 2014, NASA awarded two huge contracts worth $6.8 billion to Boeing and SpaceX, with the aim of getting crew to the ISS independently once again. Right out of the gate, Boeing got better treatment from NASA. Everyone thought that Starliner would launch before Dragon, but the result was pitiful. SpaceX has since launched multiple NASA-funded crew missions to the ISS, while Boeing, also a private company, has yet to carry a human in its Starliner capsule. Most recently, NASA and SpaceX even signed a Space Act agreement to study the feasibility of boosting the orbit of the iconic Hubble Space Telescope, potentially ensuring that the highly successful observatory will remain operable well into the middle of this century. A fair burn to Boeing, which has in short been absolutely eating SpaceX dust for over a decade. But it was a bit of a self-burn as well, seeing as how by many accounts Nelson himself was one of those early SpaceX poo-pooers. Clearly what SpaceX has achieved is far more than enough for the world to admire. Even Nelson now admitted, quote, I think the private space industry is extremely beneficial. Just look at what SpaceX has already accomplished. This isn't the first time that the head NASA honcho has glossed over his history of SpaceX ambivalence. At his NASA nomination hearing back in 2021, Nelson argued that though a series of laws dating back to the mid-'80s, he personally, quote, laid the foundation for the emergence of the modern commercial space sector. But according to former colleagues and U.S. Senate minutes, Nelson hasn't always been such a fan of privatized space travel industry, or for that matter, of mercurial SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. Back in 2010, when Nelson was still a senator, he was an extremely vocal opponent, or a poo-pooer, if you will, of a Senate push to fund these commercial crew missions into the cosmos, as corroborated by allegations from former NASA second-in-command Lori Garver in her recently published memoir. In the same memoir, Garvin also claimed that Nelson once, quote, screamed at me to get your boy Elon in line, end quote. Nelson's save-face efforts aren't terribly surprising, given SpaceX's prominent success. SpaceX was founded in March of 2002 by Elon Musk. It almost never happened. Between 2006 and 2008, its first three rocket launch attempts all failed, putting it on the edge of bankruptcy. The fourth, it succeeded, but only after Musk scraped together just enough money to finance it. Musk had made a name for himself by voicing lofty ambitions for the company. He espoused self-landing, reusable, cheap rockets, and a wider goal of enabling humanity to become multiplanetary by colonizing Mars. In 2012, SpaceX launched its first cargo delivery to the ISS, and in 2014 it was co-awarded the aforementioned NASA contract, with NASA's Commercial Crew Program member Kathy Luters telling reporters, Boeing and SpaceX proposed the value within which they were able to do the work, and the government accepted that. In May 2022, SpaceX was valued at $127 billion. Its Starlink network of thousands of internet satellites is well underway, with over 3,000 in orbit. On August 30th, it launched its 39th Falcon 9 rocket of 2022, the company's workhorse reusable launch vehicle, and it's on a mission to deliver a batch of 46 Starlink satellites into space. Then in April 2021, NASA tasked SpaceX with developing one of the most crucial aspects of the Artemis 3 mission to return American astronauts to the moon for the first time in over half-century. The Human Landing System, or HLS. This is the spacecraft that will lower humans to the lunar surface while NASA's Orion capsule remains in orbit around the moon. Orion, developed at a cost of $20.4 billion, is NASA's next-generation human spaceflight capsule. The plan for Artemis 3 is for SpaceX's huge upcoming Starship rocket and Orion to rendezvous in orbit around the Moon. 2 astronauts from the 4-person crew would then transfer to Starship and descend to the lunar surface. Once they're done, Starship will launch the 2 astronauts back into orbit where they'll transfer back into Orion and travel home. SpaceX must keep in step with NASA and develop Starship from a rocket that is not yet flown into one that's capable of supporting human crews and carrying out a lunar landing. And now, according to the latest update from Nelson, SpaceX is on track to achieve it. NASA was hoping to launch its huge Space Launch System rocket, SLS, on the backbone of the Artemis program on a test flight called Artemis 1 on September 3rd. But technical faults delayed that attempt as well as the previous one. It's unclear when the space agency will attempt another launch. If successful, the launch would mark the start of the Artemis program, which aims to return humans to the Moon by 2025 with the help of private companies like SpaceX. NASA has spent 12 years and $23 billion developing SLS alone, and that's not taking into account the Orion capsule. In contrast, SpaceX developed Starship so fast that it went from blowing up steel prototypes in 2020 to just being weeks away from an orbital flight, potentially before 2023. In addition, SpaceX says that when Starship does fly, it'll be significantly more powerful than SLS, producing a claimed 17 million pounds of thrust to SLS's 9.5 million. Nelson says he does not see this as a threat. Quote, "The fact is, we've got a rocket that's human-related," he said. "I'm a huge fan of what these commercial companies not only have done but will do. SpaceX has been very successful in getting Starship ready, but Starship goes to the Moon and it's got a rendezvous in a lunar polar orbit with Orion and the crew transfer and then go down and come back up. But Starship's not capable at that point of getting back to Earth. Only Orion is capable of getting back to Earth." Looking ahead, NASA's budget suggests it's committed to building up private spaceflight even more. According to the agency's 2021 fiscal report, they plan to spend around 80% of its budgeting on contracting. It's unclear if that's set to increase or decrease, but with the agency's goal of getting to Mars by the 2040s, significant investment is likely. Like Nelson said, "So I want Blue Origin, I want SpaceX, I want all of the other companies to be successful because I want as many opportunities for us to explore the cosmos as possible. And because of that, I think it's a very exciting time for venturing out into the universe." Well, that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Don't forget, subscribe, press that like button, share your ideas in the comments section down below. Why? Because your support motivates us to make more quality videos. And for that, we thank you so much and hope to see you next time.